Hello, welcome to Ms. Shortcut, for a quick and punchy insight into another economic development story. Today we are going to dive into the story of Japan. It is remarkable. Japan's story is one of the most remarkable transformations in modern economic history. From centuries of isolation and feudalism, to global dominance in cars, electronics, and manufacturing, Japan defied the odds. But after achieving what many believed was unstoppable growth, the country hit a wall. And what came next was something no one expected. In this story, we'll explore how Japan rose from the ashes of war to become an economic superpower and why escaping stagnation proved harder than rebuilding a nation from rubble. The Shogun era and Japan's opening. For over 2 centuries, Japan operated in relative isolation under the Tokugawa shogunate. The feudal system kept society rigid and self-contained. Samurai ruled the social structure, and foreign trade was tightly restricted. But change came quickly during the mid-1800s. Pressured by Western powers, particularly the U.S., Japan opened its ports under the Treaty of Kanagawa in 1854. This marked the beginning of the Meiji Restoration, a national movement that overthrew the feudal order and prioritized modernization. In just a few decades, Japan went from swords and scrolls to steamships and steel mills. It built railways, adopted Western-style education, and began developing a modern military and industrial base. By the early 20th century, Japan was no longer an isolated archipelago, it was an empire. It defeated Russia in war, colonized Korea, and established itself as a rising global power. World War II, total destruction. But that trajectory came to a brutal halt in World War II. After years of militarism and expansion, Japan found itself facing near-total defeat by 1945. The end of the war left Japan in ruins. Cities like Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki were decimated. Industry had collapsed. Millions were homeless. The economy was in shambles, inflation rampant, and food shortages widespread. Yet, amid the devastation, something incredible happened. The U.S. occupation and rebuilding. Under the U.S. occupation led by General Douglas MacArthur, Japan underwent dramatic reforms. Land reforms redistributed property from landlords to tenant farmers. Labor unions were legalized. A new constitution was drafted, emphasizing peace, democracy, and human rights. The U.S. also provided significant economic aid through the Dodge Plan, and later, as the Korean War broke out, Japan's industries were used to support American military needs, giving a major boost to local manufacturing. With these changes, Japan laid the foundations of what would become an unprecedented economic boom. The miracle, 1950s to 1980s. Japan's economic miracle began in earnest in the 1950s and exploded through the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. In just a few decades, the country transformed into a global manufacturing powerhouse. Key to this transformation were export-driven growth. Japan focused on producing high-quality goods for export, especially cars and electronics. Education and discipline. A highly educated, disciplined workforce contributed to productivity and innovation. Government-industry cooperation. Agencies like MITI, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, coordinated policy and business strategy. Corporate culture, lifetime employment, team-based decision-making, and Kaizen, continuous improvement, helped Japanese firms outperform global rivals. Companies like Toyota, Sony, Panasonic, Honda, and Toshiba became household names across the globe. By the late 1980s, Japan had the second-largest economy in the world. Its GDP per capita rivaled that of the US, and it seemed like the country was on an unstoppable rise. The bubble and the burst, 1990s. But beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. During the 1980s, Japan experienced a massive asset bubble. Land prices in Tokyo reached absurd levels. Some reports claimed that the Imperial Palace grounds were worth more than the entire state of California. Stock prices soared as banks lent freely and speculation ran wild. By the end of the decade, the bubble burst hard. The 1990s became known as the lost decade. Real estate and stock markets collapsed. Banks held massive bad debts and stopped lending. Consumer spending stalled. Deflation set in. And the real tragedy? The economy never quite recovered. Education and culture. Tokyo is one of the most crowded cities in the world. How the people of Tokyo are so respectful of each other, and how Japanese students are able to walk to school independently without any worries in such a crowded city. In many big cities in the world, students can't go to school independently because of safety concerns. How is this possible in Japan? Is the respectful behavior imposed at school, or is it a feature of the family culture? The other feature that might be observed only in Japanese schools is the sharing of responsibility with students regarding public cleaning and tidying of school items. This approach seems to produce developed, cultured and quality person for the society. Why Japan is still struggling. Unlike the US or Europe, Japan didn't experience a quick rebound. Instead, it faced a slow-motion crisis that has now lasted more than 30 years. Here's 5 responses of why. 1. Demographic decline. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world. The birth rate is low, and immigration remains limited. Fewer young people means fewer workers and consumers. 2. Deflationary trap. For years, prices kept falling. This discouraged spending and investment. Consumers waited for things to get cheaper. Even zero or negative interest rates didn't help much. 3. Structural rigidity. Japan's labor market and corporate culture, while once strengths, became barriers to flexibility. Lifetime employment reduced labor mobility. Risk aversion made reform difficult. 4. Global competition. Japan no longer had the global manufacturing edge. South Korea, China, and others began producing similar goods at lower costs. 5. Policy missteps. Attempts at fiscal stimulus and monetary easing were often too little, too late. Political leadership changed frequently, leading to inconsistent strategies. Japan's GDP has barely grown in decades. Public debt has skyrocketed. And while the quality of life remains high, the dynamism that once defined the country is harder to find. Rebuilding was easier than restarting. It's a strange truth. Rebuilding Japan after the war took a few decades. But reviving its economy after the bubble burst? That challenge is still ongoing. Why? Because building from zero means you have nothing to lose. Everything you build is progress. But escaping stagnation means changing habits, structures, and systems that are already deeply rooted and deeply resistant to change. It turns out, growth is not just about resources. It's also about energy, optimism, and momentum. And those are harder to generate when your society is aging, your population is shrinking, and your glory days feel like they're behind you. Quality understanding. The concept of quality has evolved to encompass the understanding that Japanese products are renowned for their durability and reliability, surpassing other similar products in these areas. Many brands and products in the electronics and automotive sectors come to mind as examples. Could the approach leading to this result be the understanding of raising quality people starting with education? Japan still matters. It's still the third largest economy on Earth. Its culture, technology, and innovation continue to inspire. But its journey offers powerful lessons. Growth isn't permanent. Success can breed complacency. And sometimes, rebuilding from nothing is easier than changing what already exists. This was Ms.Shortcut, and this was the story of Japan's economic miracle, and why it stopped.